Hello, I'm Judy Curry Slack. The Curry family and the Slack family have been friends of Melvine Rolston for over 60 years. I was honored when Melvine asked me to write her biography. I decided that Melvine already told her own story in a program in February of 2005 when she spoke to the Bighorn City Historical Society when the Cookbook 80 Years in the Kitchen was printed. She gave a wonderful talk, and so that will be at the end of this DVD recording. This spring, I asked Melvine to autograph a cookbook for me. So she autographed it March 9th, 2012. She is 102 plus and counting. You will first see some interviews done with her son Lyle and her daughter Gail, and we met up at the manor where Melvine was a patron, and we had to wear gowns and gloves, but she was very, very healthy. And through that conversation, you will hear some of her stories that she also had in the 2005 program. But I hope you enjoy it, and we were going to add all of the photographs that we have and the statistics about her life in the next printing of her cookbook. And we probably should title it 95 Years in the Kitchen. Thank you and enjoy. Melvine is one of our most precious treasures of Bighorn. This photo was taken March 2005 at the Bighorn Women's Club meeting when the girls were trying on Betty Berry's hats. From left to right is my mother, Helen Curry. In the middle is Betty Berry, and on the right is Melvine Rolston. Today is April 14th, 2012, and we're here at the Sheridan Manor visiting with Melvine Rolston and her son, Lyle. And Lyle, where are you from?
I'm Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson. And her daughter, Gail. And Gail, where do you live?
I am from Laramie, Wyoming.
Okay. Melvine, I would like to ask you, how old are you today?
102 and the 14 months or whatever it is, by June I'll be 103. June 25th I'll be 103.
Wonderful. So we're going to ask a few questions to get this story ready for your book. And Melvine, can you tell us where you were born?
I was born in Verdell, Nebraska, in Knox County by, well, Mom always told me Mrs. Stieffather brought me because I didn't go to the hospital or anything. I was born at home.
Okay. And what date and year was that you were born?
What's his? What day?
What day were you born?
The 25th of June.
And the year? What year was it?
1909.
Oh. And what were your parents' names?
My father was William David Bobbitt, Bobbitt, and my mother's name was Grace Barnes. She didn't have a middle name, just Grace Barnes.
Okay. And then I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. When did you move to Wyoming?
We moved here in 1919 in covered wagon from Idaho.
Okay, we have that on the tape, so I wanted to ask you, what was your the date of marriage to Les Rolston?
September 27th.
And the year?
1930, let's see, Lyle was born in 36, so we were married in 35.
Okay.
We have a tray that hangs on the wall that has that in it.
Okay. Lyle, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
I can't think of anything.
Okay.
Had a great childhood and grew up in the Sheridan County, Bighorn area, and I've always loved this country.
Great. Gail, would you like to share anything?
Well, I felt like my parents were very good parents because they had had hard childhoods. And so I felt that they were very good parents, and I just had a wonderful, really childhood.
Great. Well, this is just an interview to a program that Melvine gave in the year 2005, and we're going to add that next to the DVD. So she tells her own story really well, and then after that we'll have a few photographs, and then this is going to be in the cookbook of Melvine's cookbook that was introduced in 2005. I think it was 80 years in the kitchen.
Yes.
And so we'll have the cookbook will follow, so enjoy all the recipes. Thank you. If something comes up that we can.
Well, I have one, yeah.
Melvine, one of the stories that we've never really captured on tape is when you cooked for the Queen. Can you give us just a few comments about that time?
Did we have any comments?
Any comments about, just some comments about when you cooked for the Queen? Anything that you...
That was 1984.
Right. And you were just asked to...
At hunting season, I know, because they had to be so careful, you know. It was hunting season, and we had a picnic the first day, and served, well, this lady from Salt Lake called me and heard that I was cooking for the Queen and wondered what my head was going to feed her. And I said, well, I don't really know, because Jean and Grace Kakuchka were getting the menus together because they had to buy the food, because they didn't stay there all the time, and so they had to get the menus according to the food, or the food according to their menus. And so she wanted an interview, and I said, well, I can't give you an interview. I don't really know anything, but I'll give you Grace's phone number, and you could call her, and which she did, and she got to interview at Grace's house, and we met there, and this girl from Salt Lake was there and took pictures and stuff, and so that's, and when we were there, she was only there 4 days. The first day she had beef, potluck beef, something. I had all those menus and things. I don't know where they are now. And then we had turkey sandwiches the next day, and for the picnic. And that night, the first night, I think we had the trout, lovely big trout, and they thought they were from right there at the ranch, but they found out that they were from Dome Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And Dome Lake has that in their book. And then the second day they was going to have another picnic, and I stayed up till about 11:30 frying chicken. Had 8 chickens, fresh chickens, got bought at Bighorn store, and cut them up and fried them. And it was about 11:30 when I got finished, but Jeannie wanted to be sure to be cooled out. Well, it cooled out okay. The next day was windy and cold, and wasn't too many came to the picnic, and so we had hot potato soup and fried chicken and a big tossed salad. And she came out and asked me, I had baked an apple pie for dinner that night. And when I say apple pie, they have a thing that the crust was round and the apples in the middle and everything. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but it turned out really well. And she asked if you could have that at noon for, for dessert. It would make a perfect lunch that way with a hot potato soup and the fried chicken and the tossed salad and the apple pie, and which was okay. Then Sunday night we had ham and pineapple around and scalloped potatoes, and I can't remember the asparagus, because the asparagus was supposed to be first, and I didn't think, I thought it'd be hot, but it was supposed to be asparagus salad, but the way it was written, it just said first. And so we cooled it down real fast, and one of the boys that cooked in England said that they had it warm a lot of times, and it didn't matter if it was that cold or not. And so, and for dessert we had ice cream and fresh fruit. I can't remember, but they always had fruit instead of desserts with all the meals. We didn't have a special dessert each time. They always have fresh fruit, big quantities of apples, oranges, bananas, whatever was in season, but that's what they had for dessert.
So did you get to meet the Queen?
Oh yes, the afternoon that she came in, they was kind of a little bit late, but they brought her out and introduced us to me and Grace Kukutska, and Wyla Loomis came over to do the serving, and I heard Grace tell her what dishes to get down and how many to set the table for the first noon, and how many there was going to be. And then after that, she and Grace did the tea at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And Wyla Grace asked Wyla and I to each make a cake. So Wyla said she'd make an Asian food. She was having really nice luck with her Asian foods that summer. So she made an Asian food, and I made a chocolate cake, and it didn't rise quite as high as I thought it should, because I used regular cake flour, and I laid it to that. I don't know what it was, but anyway, we had both cake and what wasn't, we didn't use the Scotland Yard, of course, was all around the place. They changed shifts at a certain time, and we didn't have to feed them or anything. It was all we fed was the lady in waiting, and one of the boys, there was two, what do they call them? That was right with the Queen, the rest of them were all around the yard. They had lights every so often around, and everything was, every time we went in or out, we had to, had our names and everything so that we could get in without questioning all the time. And
Did you have to cook her breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
no, there was no breakfast ever. I don't know whether they got up and had the lady in waiting fix her some coffee or what, but there was never any dirty dishes or anything in the morning. I didn't go until about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. It was really, had to hurry a lot of times because of, you know, we didn't have too much time before meals.
Somebody,
Interesting.
the Queen asked somebody to get some of your cookbooks that she was gonna give away as gifts or something like, was it the Queen or one of the guys that was with her that got some of the cookbooks? I remember.
The lady in waiting and, just a minute. Oh, she lives right in John's house now. They bought John Wallop's house.
Oh, you mean Mrs. Wallach?
Yeah,
Joan Wallach?
Joan Wallach took the lady in waiting and another, Gene Svens, and shopping while they were doing the picnic things. Why, Joan took them in town shopping, and they ate at the Sheridan Inn, because it was just reopened again or something. And they bought 5 cookbooks, and I had presented one to the Queen when we told her goodbye. We had to line up, and Grace was first, and then me, and then right down the line there was 2 Grace, and Grace Smith was there at the time too, and Lila, and I think that was about all the help they had. And these 2 men, what do they call them? They were with her all the time, and it's in the papers when he caught this fellow in the room with the Queen right after they got home on a file, a big article in the paper. I think Rick has all those papers and things.
You might have.
Okay.
I think he took all that stuff from the Queen.
Did the FBI check you out though before she came?
But
Was it the FBI that checked you out
Yes,
before she came?
Jack Pellissier was the one that, what did they call him?
He was the agent.
F- FBI agent.
Yeah.
Yes, anyway, see, we were okay to be there for the Queen.
Would have been tough for him to check.
That's a great story.
Him,
Yeah,
Jack's
it
dad, he was a neat guy. He was a
Yeah.
neat guy.
Nice person.
Yeah.
And all of those people are gone, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Now Jack's gone, Rachel's gone, and
Grace.
Grace and
Kakuchka.
Dorothy, the other girl that worked at the Bradford Britton.
Dorothy
they're all
Savage.
dead,
Mhm.
and so it's kinda hard to, you know, you have to remember so many things. And I'm getting to the point where I have to stop and think like Jones today.
If I could remember.
Oh,
Depends
you do
what
wonderful.
Her memory is unbelievable.
It is.
When she presented the Queen with her cookbook now, the Queen gave her picture.
Oh, I think I've seen that in Melvine's things at home, yeah.
Yeah.
We couldn't have anything wrapped, but I presented her with a cookbook when she thanked me for being, I said it was an honor to be able to cook for her, and I presented her with a cookbook. And I don't know what others said, but we were all to say something to her as we passed through and shook her hand and everything. She was very nice and dressed in suits all the time. And she got to take a big walk one day, and well, you know, 4 days isn't very much to do anything. The one picnic, and then she took a walk, and then the other day was supposed to be another picnic, but it was just too cold.
But
Melvine, go ahead. Mel.
Before she left though, she did go to where was the place just below Bighorn there that burnt down, the restaurant?
Maverick.
The Maverick, yes, and she did go there and said that was the first time she had ever ordered off of a menu,
Yeah.
which was kind of interesting to me, because otherwise everybody ordered everything for her, but she got to order off of a menu, and that was the first
And I
time
think
ever.
she had the queen cut fillet.
I think she did too,
Really?
had the
Did
queen,
you?
yes.
Yes. Another story that I heard from Skip Israel was that when they were down at the Bighorn Merc,
Yeah,
she walked through the Bighorn Merc and she could not ever buy anything for herself. So as soon as she got back to the ranch, she ordered a box of graham crackers with the cinnamon.
yeah.
Yes.
You
Isn't
remember that,
something?
Melvine?
Yes.
She
She didn't want any cake or anything.
Mm-mm.
She did have a piece of wireless angel food, but otherwise she just wanted these little crackers, sort of.
She had
Wow.
never seen them before, and so I think they even took a case back with them.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, she just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting time for Bighorn, actually. It was a, you know,
I think she had to watch her diet, and that was the reason she, you know, the cookies and everything that Grace and Dorothy baked for her, you know, she took those home with her on the plane, but she didn't eat them while she was there. She always just ate the dried cake or cookies or whatever they were.
Melvine, were you ever asked to cook for her husband, Prince Philip, when he was here? Did
Prince Philip.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I cooked the first meal when he got here that day. That was in 1969, because it was when Clifton died, they called me, and I was washing up the dishes. She has a room at Sugarland. Dr. McLean is a nurse, McLean, but he's been gone about 10 years, and Darcy introduced me to her, and I said, "Oh, are you Dr. McLean's wife?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I cooked your dinner when you were married." She was married at Wilson's out in front of the fireplace. Dr. An Episcopal minister, and he didn't want a public wedding because he'd been married before, and I don't know whether his wife died, just what, but anyway, he didn't want a public wedding, and so they were married up at Wilson's in front of the fireplace, and I was called to do the cooking, and that was written in the front of one of my cookbooks.
Okay.
I think I still have it, the old one, and it was in 1969, and I don't know exactly what month it was or anything, but
And do you remember what you cooked for Prince Philip? Do you remember the menu?
yes, we had steak, and I can't remember exactly what else, and had lemon pie, because I had an awful time finding a container you could cook the lemon in without couldn't find a double boiler, and all kinds of pots and pans, but nothing that fit together for a double boiler. But I got lemon pie made, and that was his favorite, he said. And he was really nice. That was in October, Halloween, because they had duck for apples and all sorts of stuff that night, I guess, afterwards. But I cooked and served that, and a girl that went to school and come over and helped do little things, helped after she got there, and finally helped me get things together and set the table and all that sort of thing. Yes, and then the next day I fried chicken, and they went to the mountain and had the cabin that Joan Clyde had way over past the ranger station.
The Lunds,
yeah,
Yeah.
Joe and Clyde Lund.
yeah.
Yeah.
It isn't the same one that they have now, it was on Beyond. Didn't you cook for Prince Philip one other time later? when they were here hunting, and they were hunting pheasants?
I don't know whether I did or not.
Well, I know you did, because you told about how they did their
Oh.
pheasants. They would hang, they didn't take the insides out, but they would hang them on the clothesline until their heads fell off.
And that's when they were ripe enough to eat.
Well,
Right.
they were at the house when I
That's-
went pheasant hunting and brought the pheasants back in and right there at the
Yeah. They had,
house.
they had a regular
On Creek's
old English
old house.
hunts. They would turn, they had, they raised so many pheasants, and then they have all the dogs, and the guys would handle the dogs, and their hunts were typical of an English hunt out on one of their,
We had a wine, something that I fixed was wine in pheasants. We fried them for Wilson's.
the pheasants. That's those people. They always liked them. So aged that you don't know how in the world they ever ate those things, but that was their way to always.
Well, I remember when he came the first time in '69 because I was very young. That's the year I graduated from high school. My mom wanted to go and up to the airport to see him, right?
Mhm.
Well, you weren't allowed to even get close to the airport, but somebody waved Mom, Mrs. Curry. She just drove right through we didn't know what we were doing. We get up to the building and we go to the door and there's Oliver Wallop. And he says, "Oh, Mrs. Curry, come right on in." So we were the only two non-service people inside the airport, and we got to meet Prince Philip and shake hands, and he visited with Mom. Then they left. It was really funny that we got in that far.
Yes.
I always thought I might get to. Well, I went to school with Jean
Yeah.
up until she went to boarding school, but then she went over there and married the Earl of Portsmouth or whatever it was, and one thing and another. But we were kids together, and at that time in Bighorn, it was sort of, so many of them had their maids and their butlers. And I had Carnahan. Davy Carnahan was a good friend of mine. I used to go home with him on a weekend, and their life was a lot different than what mine was, but it was. We had so many of those kids were my age, the Fordyce, and the Wallops, and the Carnahans, and so I was, knew so many of them.
Yeah.
Heck, to them and me, they were just some more kids, and I'd go home weekends and stay with them, and we'd do things, but it was a little different having somebody come in and wait on you and one thing and another.
Where did the Carnahans live?
Where do they?
Where did they?
They were on the Island Ranch. It's
Patty Kelly's?
I think it is. I think that's where
I
it is.
think that's
It was
where-
called the Island Ranch, and I don't know why. It sits off of the main two roads
Roads,
on the
yeah.
loop. It sits down in there,
Okay.
and I can't remember just exactly even how.
Costello, I'm thinking of Costello.
Costello.
They were at the,
Well, they were up.
Hidden
They were
by
up-
Hidden Valley. They
Hidden
were.
Valley, yeah.
They bought Erdman's. That was
okay,
Mrs. Erdman had that until she sold it to them.
and then.
And of course, the
also
woods.
The Woods is, right.
Yeah, that was always such a,
And that's where Moss's, I believe, or.
Yeah,
more-
that was Moss.
but they had the pond there, and they always kept it clean if you wanted to swim. They had the cabin, and then in the winter it was all ice skating, and they always kept hot chocolate and marshmallows and hot dogs and everything for us.
Well, that society.
And this is Lou Reeves. She's here visiting today too, so I'll be sure that we get Lou on tape.
Yes.
It's really interesting that society that all those people, there so many people in Sheridan never even knew it existed out here because they were never allowed on those places to hunt or do anything. They just knew they were there, and they might see the cars go in town with a driver or something. Mom and Dad ran the dairy at Gallatin's.
Oh, that's true,
And
yes.
when Mrs. Gallatin was such a neat person, did so much for the Cheyenne Indians and things, but every year on the 4th of July, they put on a fireworks show just for the kids, local kids, that was as good as a lot of these they do now and things. just growing up on that ranch, I, had a lot of advantages and everything.
How many years did they live there at the Gallatin Ranch?
How long were you up with the dairy, Mom, Gallons?
All during the war.
Yeah,
Gail was just in a cart when we went up there, and you had your 5th birthday.
yeah, I was there when I was 5, I remember.
And then when the war was over, that's when we left.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had given them notice
Yeah.
because Les was supposed to, he'd already had his medical
To go in
treatments and all
military.
that. And
He was to go into the war.
called to go, and the war was over, so.
He didn't
But
have,
he didn't have to go.
You know, he didn't have to go because it ended before he was,
he had a choice, he could either go on into the military or stay, and he stayed. But that was, that ranch was totally self-sufficient, basically. They had their gardeners and
Huge
everything,
garden.
everything except they go get loads of coal for their heating the furnaces at the different places there and one thing another, but they raised everything, and it was almost a quarantine type thing because Carlo above was Italian and they were at war with the United States, and the oldest boy, their oldest son,
Francesco.
Chesto.
well, no, it was the oldest Gallatin boy, B's brother.
Tom?
Yeah, and he was a radio ham, and at that time, not many people had all that equipment, everything was, and they had their big aerials and all kinds of things, and man, when that war they came in and they had to remove all that stuff from the ranch and everything. There would be no communications out of there, I think, because of Carlo.
Carlo.
It was an interesting times, for those that of course, I was only 5 when I left there, I think, but I remember a lot of that. And Sackett's used to pick us up in the school bus. I started school when I was 5, first grade, and we in the winter from the dairy up there down to the main ranch, Dad delivered every day milk, and we raised all their chickens and their pork, and he would make deliveries every day with milk, cream. We had to separate a lot of it for cream. We made the butter. All the butter was made up there and everything, and then they'd order 20 chickens. Mom and Dad would go out and kill the chickens and pick them. That's all they had to do was just. But yeah, it was interesting in that it was such a closed situation because of the war and things there. That ranch was different. Mrs. Gallen was she was a
They
wonderful.
always had to laugh. Well, one morning we were taking the milk and stuff down to the ranch, and I was gonna help down there. And Roy Deal was out in the field, and he was laughing and laughing. We couldn't imagine what he's laughing about. But we had the horse, one trailer, pulled with one horse, and I think his name was Old Bill. And the dog was followed, and then there was a goat that was coming along behind. And he just got a big kick out of us bringing that milk and stuff down with that old cart and all this string of things behind us. Had Gail.
All the delivery was done with.
She
It
played
was
the
a buggy.
Sandra. Gonna be today,
Oh, it's cloudy.
is it?
Yep.
It's a little bit nippy out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nippy for
Supposed to
me.
get some snow and rain, possibly.
Come from
This-
Arizona, it's real nippy.
Yeah, his blood's kind of thinned out, hasn't
Oh, boy, you
it?
don't
He
know.
turns up the heat. Can I
You
turn down the window just a minute?
people, you never think of it, but I went, I've been 20-some years in Arizona, but I'm transferred down from Billings. And all the guys in the office, it'd be winter and it would be chilly. And they'd come in with these heavy coats on, stocking caps. I mean, and I thought, you're nuts. I'm running around in shirt sleeves and one thing another. I'm just like them now, we just get to where you just,
Yeah.
but
Get used
that's
to
all
what
right.
you're used to. Well, let's see, Melvine, is there anything else we need to visit about?
I just don't know anything, oh, there's a lot of little things that it could be interesting, you know, like the first trip to the mountain in a wagon, and we stopped up there across from Mead Creek someplace and stayed all night from Sheridan with Mr. Strong and let's see who else. He wanted his son, grandson, to see the Bellows cabin while it was still available. And so he took us in the wagon. There's, oh, I can't remember right now. The kids' names or anything. I can't after, you know, if I'm thinking about it at night or something, but in the daytime, some of these things don't come to you so much. But the next morning we had a breakfast over on Rapid Creek, just up over the mountain, and then we got to the cabin that afternoon, and then they were working on the trails up there, and Rosemary was, now not Rosemary Shum, but Rosemary Carroll, and I were on one horse, and we kind of got ahead, and so we were okay, but this Mr. Strong was on a horse, and his horse was drinking, and when they set the dynamite off, why, the horse jumped, and he was fell off, of course, and it broke his pelvis bone, and we went back to where they were, and gee, I can't think of their names right now, but anyway, we went down, I went down with one of the horses and got a blanket, an army blanket, and they took nails that they had sawed or put the cabin together with, and made a to hold him on, like, you know,
A stretcher?
stretchers, yeah, and got him back to the cabin, and then we got word down to Riley's cabin, Riley's motor place, and they sent a car, and we got him down as far as, oh, they talk about it now, what was her name? He had Spiro Wigwam.
Mrs. Spear?
Miss Peer, yeah, Mrs. Peer, and we got down that far. They had a telephone some way. Anyway, we got him to the hospital, and they took care of him, and he got okay, I guess, but little incidents like that you went through were very interesting, you know. We went fishing and had a whole string of fish. There's a picture of it someplace in one of the albums, a whole string of fish that we caught.
Oh, yeah.
And we were going to Lake Geneva that day, but this all happened, and so we didn't get there. I never did get there. When we got down, I rode down clear to the hospital with this Mr. Strong.
Melvine, can you give us maybe one really important thought or motto or an important saying that you could share with people that are going to read your book, such as happy cooking or something of that sort? I don't know. Just something to end our interview with.
Well, I always laid it to the 4-H girls. They were more important to me than anything, and they still, you know, remember me. Dolores DeJarlin and little Don DeJarlin got 5 cookbooks this year, so each one of his could have one. And now he just ordered another one. He got 5 before, now he ordered another one. And he and Gail are about the same age or someplace close. They used to play together so much, and
He's a year older.
because Louise was cooking her at the school, and so they bring him down there and leave him with me for a while, I don't know how long. And but the 4-H kids always meant so much. They meant a lot to me.
What year were you diagnosed with breast cancer?
Well, I had the dining room. I know I went in to have my eyes checked, and they dilated them, and I went over to the doctor while they were being, come back or something, and told him that my breast was kind of, had leakage, sort of, and he examined it, and he sent it in, and it got back that it was cancerous right away. But what year was that? Well, it was 1949, but I
Yeah.
don't know exactly.
And what doctor did you go to at that
Dr.
time?
Rogers,
And he was in Sheridan,
yes,
and then he
Yes.
did your surgery.
yes.
And
I think
you-
it was his first cancer suicide, because he operated to my neck, over to this breast, and down to my navel, and under this arm. I was nothing but a bunch of
Stitches.
stitches. And when they took those out, they were terrible. They found that I was allergic to tape, and so they had to do something else. I can't remember, but it was, then there was another doctor, Dr. Rogers, had to go to Denver, and his testicle came down or something, was in the hospital there for a short time, and Dr.
Antone?
Anton, probably.
Antone?
No, was from the mines.
I don't know who it was. I don't know.
Now, did you have any kind of chemo or radiation or cobalt treatments?
No, there was nothing that way in order at that time. So
And
I
how
never
long
had-
were you in the hospital?
Oh gosh, 2 or 3 weeks. I know it was quite a long time.
And then,
And see,
Gail,
there
you,
again, Mrs. Wilson was in every day to see me, and different ones, and they're all gone.
yes, I'm gonna have Gail, tell us the letter that you got when you turned, 100.
Yes, it was from the American Cancer Society, and it was just telling her that she was the oldest living breast cancer survivor, and
She still is surviving.
she's still surviving at almost 103.
You wonder how long she'd live if she hadn't had that, how many years that took off her life.
Yes, exactly.
Because that
Oh.
was when I was 100 years old.
Yes, that was amazing. I just couldn't believe that they would keep track of that somewhere.
Yes, I was too, and
How did they
you
know?
talk to nurses and things today, and they say, oh, she couldn't have had,
There's
she would be alive
somebody-
today, and I said, well,
Well, she went to Mayo's for a checkup years later, and they asked who did the surgery,
Who's
because they
that?
couldn't believe how it was
That
so
fellow that was
severe, but it's what kept her
They
alive.
did,
Yeah.
and they really took out all of the markers around. They must have
Yeah.
really just decided to take everything they could.
yeah, they took
Every,
out every
lymph
muscle
node,
and things
everything that it
too.
would go to was taken. That was the reason she survived it, but
They had
for the time, it was something.
party on it at a Bighorn one time, and who was this fisherman, and he was at Dome Lake for a while. And his wife was the one that invited me to that, and they had all these people that had survived cancer and whatnot, and I was the oldest one.
Yeah.
And why you know their names as well as I do. They were up and down for a year or two, and they're still alive, because I saw him in the Walmart one time, and he knew me right away, but I can't see people well enough to know who they are anymore.
I don't know what would be.
But what could his wife's name be? They live up on, beyond where Joanne Lunn lives. She knows him real well. You get quite a bit of information from Joanne.
Okay, I will, because I
Daughter.
well, thank you, Melvine.
You're welcome. Anything I can do, I'd be happy to. You know, your mother and I were two close people.
Yeah.
Helen Curry and I were always, she just a year younger. One time I asked her though, when we were having club and it was her birthday, and I said, Helen, how old are you? She said, I don't think it's any of your business. That always amused me, because she was really, after that, you know, it didn't make any difference to her. She was that much younger than me.
That's a sweet
She didn't
story.
want to be so old at that time.
No.
They get this age, then they.
Well, Melvine, thank you so much for interviewing. I really appreciate it. And you know you're a treasure. You're a bighorn treasure. We love you, and you're so precious. So thank you for all of your stories and all of your recipes. You're just an awesome asset to our community.
Cooking has been her
Life.
life. Yes, it
Food
has.
has always been.
Yes, good food
Yeah.
and cooking have always been her life.
Yeah.
Got them back there, and as soon as the book finally really loud, committed, but we've got them back there, and as soon as the presentation is over, I'll grab a couple of helpers and we'll get to selling the cookbooks. And if you've looked at them, if you're as excited as I have been about them, they're going to be with tax $16, and it's a complete reprint of Melvine's 60 Years in the Kitchen, and then our additional recipes. And I was talking to Gail this fall. She said, but it's long more than 60 years, so we renamed it 80 years, and what's that? So we'll take care of that after the presentation.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Patty Lewis. I'm Larry's wife. And when Larry and the board were working on the program for this year, I asked him if he would include something, kind of for the gals. There's so much rich history here, and we hear a lot about battles, we hear a lot about generals, but there was also all the gals that were here and contributed to this part of the country. And for those of you that know me, you know that I love to cook, and I'm a dietitian by career, and I've just had a lifelong interest in food and cooking. And I've been cooking since I was a little kid. But after interviewing Melvine, what I understand is I cooked because I wanted to. I could cook or not cook, just whenever I pleased. And I had the advantage of a full modern kitchen whenever I wanted to do it. So, because I think cooking is such an interesting part of our history, I was really looking forward to visiting with Melvine. We had some great meetings. So what she's going to talk about is cooking during the homestead years, before it was comfortable and fun. And she wanted to title this, 60 Years of Cooking. But I agree with her daughter. It is much more than that. It's closer to 80 plus years of cooking, because she's still cooking. So I'm going to have Melvine and her grandson Lane come up, and Lane's going to introduce his family, and then we'll get started with Melvine.
thanks for having us. We've been looking forward to this for quite a long time too. My name is Lane Rolston. I'm grandson lives up in Missoula, Montana, and this is my wife Mary, and my two daughters Hannah and Emily, and my younger brother Jeff, who also lives in Missoula.
Well, does everybody hear what I have to say?
Can everybody? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Melvine. It was a joy for me to spend time sitting with you, and we're just all looking forward to hearing your stories.
Yeah, it was nice to know you, Patty. I really was happy to get to visit with you at home. And I'm very happy that so many of my friends are here. After 95 years, I have many friends. And I have a lot to say that I don't think I'll ever. My grandson is here. He's helped me on my projects. Before he started to college, he helped me up at Dome Lake for several summers. And so I feel real comfortable with him here with me.
Do you want to just go ahead and get going?
Yes. I'm very happy to tell you all that I learned some things at camp for the blind. And one thing, I was taking a speech class, believe it or not, and our instructor said, say something funny to begin with and make everybody feel at home. Well, I'm going to tell you the truth about something that happened many years ago. In fact, I think I was 4 years old. And we lived we lived in Verdale, Nebraska. I was born in Verdale, Nebraska in 1909. And my father and mother, William David Bobbitt and Grace Barnes Bobbitt. And I'm the second of 5 children. And so anyway, I've got this little story to tell you. Now my sister, 7, was going to school and always wanted to do. I just couldn't wait until I started to school. But I was home with Mom this day, and Mom was giving my little baby sister a bath, and I was real studying all the things that I've heard. And I said, Mom, where did you get me? And she said, well, this is Steve Father bought you. And I said, but you got sister at Aunt Sandy's. And I said, now, my sister Greta wants a baby brother. And so she got the Sears Roebuck catalog, and there was these babies in there. And so she picked one, a little baby, and she wanted to have it for her birthday. So her birthday was right away, the 27th of March, and the baby didn't get there, and each day she'd keep looking for the mail and everything. And so on April 4th, my mother said, well, I could go to school. Well, that was, I was real happy. So Dad had to take us, and we had to go across a little creek, about like Jackson's Creek, and it was real high. And it was only a plank to go across, and so Dad carried me across, and my sister, and we got across on the other side, and I got little cold feet. And I said, well, Dad, I think I better go back with you and help Mom take care of little sister. The babies are such a lot of work. And she said, or Dad said, no, you want to go to school. So he took me to school, and he told the teacher something. And she said, she took a hold of my hand. She said, we'll be perfectly all right. You just go on home. So I got to stay in school. And that day was just like all school days, and excepting that we had letters and things in the morning, and at noon or after recess we had numbers, and I always liked numbers. And then after lunch, she told us we could put our heads on our arms on the counter or on our desk and put our head down and rest. And I did, and I went to sleep. And I didn't wake up until recess. But after after that, it was going to be Easter right away, so I got to draw rabbits and eggs and all that sort of stuff, and that was okay. And then we got to go home that night. We stayed over with my aunt and Uncle Fred and Aunt Pearl. Uncle Fred's my mother's brother, and that was fine. I always loved Aunt Pearl. She had beautiful. We had a little cousin Leo, and he had the same color hair as his mother, and big blue eyes, and he was just beautiful. And the next day we went back to school, and then my dad came after me, and he took us home, and that little brother came. That was the reason they wanted to get rid of me. Anyway, my sister was very happy, and she named the little boy Clarence, and he always went by Clarence. She named him. So that's my story. Now, I guess we lived in Verdell for not too long after that. My dad and Uncle Fred both filed for homesteads, and so the government was putting out so much land. I think it was 160 acres or something that way. But you had to do certain things on it before you could prove up on it. It took about 3 years. And so Dad was real anxious to get going, and so he, when he to go ahead, why he got a tent and thing, all the things that he would need, and went to Hamer, Idaho, is where his homestead was. Uncle Fred's was in out of Gillette, Wyoming, and he had grasslands, and my dad had agriculture lands, and so Dad worked on the homestead then. The first thing he had to do was clear a place to put the furniture or the house and things on, but he had to have a well first and a hole for toilet so he could have a place while they were working. And so he cleared the land, and sagebrush out there was just really huge. The trunks of it is just big, and you could use it to firewood. That's what we used it for. We never had any coal or anything. We just burned this sagebrush. And he got the well drilled, or he didn't drill it, he dug it. And then he built a place for the cows, a shed, and he put out a place for the chickens and have chicken wire around it so that you could open and put the chickens in there. And he built one big, large building by the pump. So that we were supposed to stay there until we get the house built. He had foundation in. And he also had a barn and a place for hay, and that was, he took him all spring and summer. And then that fall, he had to come back to Nebraska and shuck corn. That was one thing he always did to make an extra living. And in fact, that's all we had to eat on. And so then the next spring, well, that winter, he was home, and they had a program at school. Of course, I didn't think to tell you that after I started the school that one day, the teacher said I could go every day. And so I was real happy about that. And because I knew as much as the others, because the folks used to teach me, and I always look at my sister's papers every time she came home from school. I just really learned right along with her. So anyway, forgot where I was.
You were telling me about the program at school when you're
had this program at school, and they had a tree, and we trimmed it with popcorn and things that they had those days. And you know, those days we didn't have any electricity, so you had to just have something cool to keep things. And so Dad made a cellar, and that's where you kept your milk and cream and all that sort of stuff. And anyway, at Christmas time, when they had this program, and I had to speak the piece, I think Barbara had it in the newsletter a couple of weeks ago, but his mother, will you darn my stocking? Toadies peeping through the toe. Santa Claus would think 'twas shocking. I could never hang it so. I guess I wore this big hole in here, chasing lazy hours away. Quick, Mother, darn your stocking. Christmas will be here soon. Anyway, that was the piece that I said when I was second year of school. And the other kids were in summer. They all have this program just like they do every Christmas. And so then it was spring, and Dad decided that we could go out to the ranch then, or the homestead. So he got a freight car, and we loaded all of our furniture and that sort of stuff in this box car. And he had a car. There were just two men in Verdell that had a car, but Dad was one of them. And that car wouldn't go on that box car, so he said, well, we'll drive it. So we took out, and we got as far as Blackfoot, Idaho, and the road was terrible. This was the 1st of May, and so he decided we'd leave the car there and go on by train. And we were at the depot, and my sister found a $5 bill, and she said to Mom, what should I do with it? And Mom said, well, if nobody asked for it, it's yours. So she got to keep the $5 bill, and at that time, you know, $5 was a lot. And so anyway, that afternoon the train took off, and I think it went to Butte, Montana, because it was a town where there was all mining underneath the houses and things. And we met a lady there and stayed all night. Mom liked this lady. She got very well acquainted with her. But the next day then we got on the train and went down toward Idaho Falls, and Hamer was on the way to Idaho Falls. I think it was about 30 miles before you get to Idaho Falls. And so then we got off at Hamer, and that was our, where we go to our homestead. Well, Lane was by there just this last year, and it hasn't. There's just a schoolhouse, and I think a town hall at the time that we went to school there. And we were always on the homestead. The first year we had a horse and a single rig, and the old horse's name was Bill, and we drove that to school, and we had a neighbor girl, her name was Hazel Rush, and we had a teacher, but she had a nephew or someone there that, well, she seemed to teach him more than she did us kids. And we did a lot of walking to school, and we killed the coyotes and wolves, and we were really quite frightened with them. And another thing that happened, the first thing that happened when we got to the homestead was we all got the measles, the whole bunch of us. And of course, Mom was going to have another baby, and she and the baby both had measles, and the baby was just really sick. It's a wonder that he ever came out of it. They don't usually when they have measles. And we had a cookbook, or a medicine book, and so I wanted to bring it today, but my nephew has it over at Buffalo, and so I didn't get to get it from him. But it told everything to do for all kinds of diseases and things. And the first part of it has three parts. The first part doctors all kinds of animals, and and I mean animals. And the second part is about cooking, and it has recipes in it. And the third is medicine. And Dad bought it in 1913, and it has all of, everything about it. And so that's the way we, instead of going to a doctor, why we went to the medicine book. But we all got through with the measles. Well, then this was during the World War I, of course, and Dad didn't have to go because he had something wrong with his legs and feet. And so, and being on the ranch and having a family. And that was when President Wilson and President McKinley were presidents at the time. And we had this influenza. Everybody had influenza. You couldn't, they closed the schools and, well, just everything. And Dad moved us to Robertson because he thought we should really be with a doctor. And my mother's stepmother had lived in Iowa, and she had it and died. And she had a brother that was, his name was Ramey, and he was crippled. His neck and one shoulder he was just all crippled up, and lived that way all of his life. So that influenza was all over the world, I guess. It was just like the smallpox that, you know, well, the Indians and all had so many times, and closed regular tribes. Let's see, oh yes, let's see, we had both of them. Oh, then we had a dog that had the rabies, and a mule. And Dad didn't happen to be home the day that the dog got the rabies, and so Mom put my sister out the bedroom window, and she went down to the neighbors, and Mr. Rush and his son came in a wagon with the team, and when they got up close by the dog tried to bark, but he couldn't make any noise, and they shot him, and then they took him and buried him, and Mom put a big boiler of water on it. And now we burned all this sagebrush. I kind of get behind myself, ahead of myself, but she put this boiler of water on and cleaned the backyard and porch and everything so that nothing else would get them. But when Dad come home, he thought we had another dog, Bing and Rover. Rover was the one that got the rabies, and Bing was a bulldog, and Dad used to have him when he went hunting in the wintertime. That's when he made money in the wintertime. He hunted coyotes, and then there was a bounty on him or something, and so he got paid so much for their feed or whatever. And he had these two dogs, and so he took Bing out and shot him, which we really, really felt terrible, but he's afraid that he would get them, and then just keep horses and everything, because we had this one mule, Jenny, and she had pawed around the haystack and went through some fences and things, and they finally found her, and they took her head and sent it in, and it was rabies. So, and then later we went home from school. They had a school bus. Well, it was a covered wagon on it. It was real small, and it had seats on both sides, and the school bus driver had a dog, and it didn't look very good to us kids. It was frothing at the mouth and everything, and we didn't want to get out, but he made us get out and go in home anyway, and he never did bring that dog back, so we kind of figured that it had rabies too. And then, of course, that was the 3 ways that we went to school. Walked in, we had the horse and the single tree, or single buggy. My sister had to unharness the horse after we got to school, and then we had to carry water for it. And after school, she'd have to harness it back up and everything, and it was quite a chore, so we almost did just as soon. And the winters out there weren't nearly as bad as they are here in Wyoming. I don't know, I can't remember the snow like it is. Anyway, oh yeah. Yeah. Mom had trouble with her teeth always. So Dad would take her to Idaho Falls and have her teeth worked on. And so what 5 kids couldn't get into wasn't worth mentioning. One night we made taffy, and I think we must have got the recipe out of this doctor's book because Mom never had a cookbook. And it wouldn't get hard, and we put rhubarb in it. We had it all from the house clear to the cellar, but we took it down the cellar so that it would get hard so we could pull it. But it never did get hard. When they came home, they really didn't spank us or anything. They just told us how expensive sugar was. Sugar was $18 a hundredweight. So that, and we'd had 100 pounds had lasted us a year. And so we were very careful after that. Another thing we did, we washed my brother's diapers in the horse trough. And the horses turned up their noses in water. So Dad made us up. We each had to take a pail and take that water and put it in he had a furrow around the garden that we had. And so we had to empty that water around in that furrow. And then we had to pump fresh water into the tank. That was our punishment. And then one day when they got ready to go to Hamer or to Idaho Falls, Mom said, told us what to have ready that night, and she said, oh, have some potatoes and some kind of meat. Well, now, meat then was really, you just didn't have much meat. We used to have chipped beef and salmon canned, and then Mom would can some meat, and if they had pigs, she would grind the sausage and put it down, fry it and put it down in the sausage, or in the grease that you fried it in, and then put it in the cellar, and it kept real well. And then they had meat down in brine, which was pretty good meat. Well, we decided we'd play a joke on them. So we went to the cellar and caught some mice. And kind of took them apart. And I fried them on the lid of a gallon pail. And they got quite a kick out of that. They did. Just one of us didn't think of, the other one did. 5 kids, and my sister was 8. Why, leave us home a tiny baby. He was born, when we first went there. So, but anyway, we had a big time. And
I'll jump in here for a second. Grandma was kind of nervous she wouldn't have enough to tell you guys. And I was kind of nervous you guys might be here for the next 2 weeks. So I'm going to try to get her back to Wyoming here soon, and we'll get her to talk about some cooking stories.
Yeah, the folks decided that they could really make a living off of that homestead, and so they would move. So Dad made 2 covered wagons. One of them was a large wagon, and it had a roof for the 2 bed springs across it. That was where we go to sleep. And then the other was the spring wagon. And just before we got to leave, my sister and I were invited to Idaho Falls to spend a day or two. And Grease said that had to say please and thank you and really eat nice at the table. And so I got to go, of course. And just before we left, or when we got ready to go home, they gave us a couple of little white rabbits. And so we took those home, and Dad made a cage for them, and then we could haul them in the back of the spring wagon. Well, it was just a few days. Well, Dad traded his car then. Evidently, he got it from Blackfoot, because he had the car all the time there on the ranch or on the homestead. But he traded it for 4 head of horses, and the big wagon took 4 head of horses, but he didn't use those. He just tied those on the back of the wagon. And I don't know exactly what day we left the homestead, or either had to be the last day or the 1st of June, because my sister's birthday was the 9th of June, mine the 25th, and my mother's the 2nd of July, so they were all on the trip, so I'm sure that it had to be on the 1st of June sometime. And we got going, and we went by way of Yellowstone Park. And when we got to the entrance of Yellowstone, the fellow there wanted to buy a horse. So Dad sold him one of the ones that he had traded the car for his wife. And later we found that that horse got loose and went all the way back to the ranch where my dad bought it, or traded it. Anyway, we was in the park for a couple of days. We watched Old Faithful go off a couple times, and then another one of the geysers. And then Mom did the laundry while we was there with the hot water and everything. and another thing, my sister and I got to wear coveralls all the way through the park. You know, you always wore dresses when you were at that age, or that day and age. And after all, this has been how many years ago? And my sister's was tan with red around the neck, and mine was tan with blue around the neck. And we really felt great to think we could wear coveralls. And so then we went through, we saw Pig Pots and the Morning Glory, and then we were going to go to Fishing Bridge. And we went to Fishing Bridge, and Dad and this other fellow, Ern Rush, went with us and drove the spring wagon. And they caught some fish, and we really was looking forward to have fresh fish. And when they got ready to clean them, they were wormy. So we didn't have any fish, and we were really disappointed. Well, there was a couple other things while we were in the park that could mention. We had to lead the horses through the tunnels because they weren't used to tunnels, and old Dolly was really, she'd just rear up, and she didn't want to go through anything that way. And now that we met this fellow with a car, and he was supposed to be out to the edge of the canyon, and we were supposed to be on the inside, but Dad talked him into letting us go on the inside, and he just parked out there, and we went by because old Dolly raised a bitch of a fit, and I mean, we could have gone over the bank real easy. So he let us go on the inside. And then we were going to go out the east entrance. That's what my dad planned, but it wasn't open yet, and so we had to go out the west or south entrance, and that must be over by Matitsi and Riverton or someplace over in there. And there was quite a few ranches and things through there, and so we stopped at this one ranch, and Dad and this rancher was talking, and their children and us were playing, and my youngest brother came up missing. And so we found him, and he was in the manger of one of the barns, and there was a snake in there with him. So we got Dad and this rancher, and the rancher reached in through where they put the hay through, and got Merlin out, and that snake stayed right there. It was a big rattlesnake, and he was all curled, and he was rattling, and his mouth was going, but he never bit him, and he had to be in there quite a while. So I think sometimes, if you don't, I don't know, I suppose he was real, watching him until he was just seeing what that snake was going to do or something, because usually he was into everything. We caught him on top of one of the horses in the back. Oh, we had one that was quite tame, but he'd crawled up on that horse behind the car, or the wagon. And then another time, Dad sent my sister and I to this house and thought maybe we could get a loaf of bread. And so we were going along, hopping over sagebrush and things, and all at once I screamed, and Greta had just stepped over this sagebrush, and there was a snake under it, and I screamed, and she jumped right back over it. And we run so fast, we just were scared to death. We run all the way back to the wagon, and the folks saw us coming. They couldn't imagine what we were running for. And we got back and told them that snake, we was afraid it was after us. And this fellow that drove the spring wagon, he sat on the tongue of our wagon. I could still hear him. He laughed and laughed and laughed, and we didn't think it was a bit funny. But, so Dad went to, took one of the horses and went and got some brandy, because in this book, medicine book, it told that if you got bit by a snake or something, how you could do it. You had to tie a tourniquet above the bite and then cut the bite and pour brandy in it or something. Anyway, we thought we had to have that book. And then we come close to Tinsley. Is that right?
Sounds right.
And we didn't go through Tinsley. It was kind of south of Tinsley. And that road is still there. I don't know whether they said the name of it was black, yellow, or yellow, black. Maybe some of them know that.
Black and yellow trail.
Black and yellow trail.
Yes, and it was real steep and rocky, and of course the horses really had a hard time pulling up that awful. It was a mountain, really, that road, but we got to the top, and there was Hazelton, and which a lot of you probably know where Hazelton is. And then the road is forked, and we wanted to go to Buffalo, so we took the road down to Buffalo, and we got into Buffalo. Well, first, Dad rested the horses for quite a while that day because that road was really so bad. And we got down to Buffalo, and we parked in the park over Buffalo, and it was Mom's birthday, so we went to this store right next to the creek over there and got her 2 handkerchiefs. And that night, they was having a show, so we went to the show, and it was Fatty Arbuckle and Hardin. And of course, there was no talking, and it was black and white, but it was funny. One of the fellows would go along and drop a piece of dough, and the other one would stop with his peg leg and step in there and make a donut. All sorts of funny stuff like that. And then we stayed in Buffalo for almost 2 days because folks decided they better stock up on all of their groceries and things, because where we were going, there wasn't going to be a store. And so we headed for Pumpkin Butte, and you couldn't see it, of course, but that's the direction we went. And we came to this creek along the way. It said Dry Creek, but they must have had a cloudburst or something on the mountain, because the water was just rolling by, and it was dirty and stuff in it. But we went across it with the big wagon and did fine, but Dad knew very well that the spring wagon would never make it. So he took a team off of the big wagon and helped the other team, and then the wagon would go sideways down and scared me to death because my sister was in that wagon. But we made it, And then it took us from the 3rd of July to the 6th to get to there from my Uncle Fred's place now. He's the one that homesteaded in Wyoming. And they had expected us the 4th of July, but we didn't get there until the 6th. And of course we had a big celebration, and my cousin that was little Leo, that was so little when we left Verdale, well, he was about 7 years old, so he had to go after the cows, and he wanted us to go with him, and so we went, and every other word was by Jingles. By Jingles, those cows ought to be here, but they didn't, they weren't there, and we'd go over the next hill. We finally found them and got them back to the barn, and so they could be milked. And Aunt Pearl had a delicious dinner, and she had prairie chickens, which was, really, if you had any prairie chickens, you know what I mean. They were so good to have fried prairie chicken, and then Aunt Pearl could bake pies. She always made caramel pies, and they tasted just like candy, sort of, and she had whipped cream on them. I still think about her. And so then we decided that we had to go on. We was just there a couple of days, and we went over to the place where my dad had leased. I suppose Uncle Fred must have given the leasing or something, because anyway, it was supposed to be ours, and the people hadn't left yet. So we had to park in a corner of a fence, sort of, and it was real dry. But Dad bought a cow, and we had to have milk, and I had to milk because Dad's legs were so bad he couldn't stoop over. Anyway, we was there for a short time, and we got moved into the house, and first was the rattlesnake. Down where this cow was, my mother and the kids came down one night to watch me milk, and all at once Mom screamed, and here this Ned Pelly, maybe you might know him, he lived here in Sheridan for some time, but this rattlesnake was right up beside his leg, and Mom grabbed him and pulled him away, and that was another experience with the rattlesnake. Scared you to death. And we got moved into the place. It was just a short time, and found that the bank that we put the money from the homestead and stuff in had gone broke. And you might know when it was, in 1929, I think. And so there we were, stranded with no money, and you couldn't buy any stock or anything. You didn't have anything to buy anything with. And the place was quite a nice place, much nicer than the ones that were out in Idaho. And we lived in this little community. They called it the Little Nebraska Settlement. And there was the Dunlaps and the Riddles and the Watkins and Shallers and James and Hayes, and then Uncle Fred's. And so they were all from the Little Nebraska Settlement. And so they found out that this Mrs. James's son had taken a homestead right close there too, and he needed someone to stay with his wife because he was going someplace to work on a road. And so who was selected to go stay with Mrs. Jane and May? Melvine. And my sister helped Uncle Fred with the lamb, and my dad went into Gillette for a while, and then they moved from this place over on the Vincent Road, which is now the road, I think, where Wright is, the way I remember. And anyway, I went to stay with May Troy, and they had this homestead, and on it there was a horse and a cow and chickens, and I had to milk the cow, and I had to take care of the chickens, and there was this one old hen that she had 15 chickens, and I thought, well, gee, we had other setting hens that was getting lots of eggs, we ought to set another hen. And May said, well, those eggs wouldn't be any good, they weren't fertile. They had to buy the eggs from some people that had a rooster, because they didn't have any roosters, and so the eggs wouldn't hatch. So we just had the one hen with the 15 chickens, and I had to gather the eggs. Oh, I hated to get a hen under that old hen, she'd peck. And we couldn't put them in a cage, or, they had sort of a crate thing that they could put them in, but it was too hot, and so you just had to suffer with the hens. And they had a root cellar, and they had they had some shelves down there, and I had to pump water. I think May was expecting again, but of course I didn't know it. I mean, as a kid, you just didn't know anything that went on.
Tell them how old you were.
What?
Tell them how old you were.
Oh, I was 11 years old. And I felt big. Anyway, it was a regular homestead. I mean, we had plenty of milk, and we skimmed it and got the cream and made butter and stuff, and we tried. She had some old magazines, and so they weren't all full old, but then someone had given us these magazines, and they had recipes in them, but you didn't always have everything to make stuff with. After you did have a recipe, you had to improvise all the time. And she baked bread, and she used a starter, and we had to cook the potatoes and take the water from the potatoes and keep the starter going. And we had this little boy, Sonny. I don't know if he had another name. We always called him Sonny. And he was a cute little guy, about a year and a half or something that way. And when his dad come home, he was very happy because he played with him. He tossed him in the air like men do kids. And his baby would giggle, and he was just a regular little darling, really. And he got to sleep with his mom and dad, and I had to sleep in his baby bed. And we played with him when his dad wasn't there, but for some reason he loved that when his dad come home. And let's see, what else did we do there?
We should probably, for about an hour, we're only on the second thing on the sheet.
Do you want to move on to the KC sheep ranch? Do you want to move on to the KC sheep ranch? The KC, the sheep ranch.
Oh, yes, right away. Yes. Oh, yes. Then after I left May, while we went to Sheridan, which was in Sheridan.
Was it? Okay.
Yes. Yes, Riley's. I went to work for C.C. Riley's. I got there the 23rd of May, and I went to work the 25th. I got into Sheridan the 23rd and went to work the 25th. And I got my first check on my birthday, the 25th of June. And so I stayed with Riley's that summer, taking care of Billy. Well, when I first started, we used to eat at the Foster House. Now, some of you may know of the Foster House. They moved it. It was right across the street from the Buick garage. But after she found out I could cook, why, she decided we'd eat at home, which we did. They were very nice. They ate, they were pretty well off. We had our regular meal, and then we cleared the table and had dessert, and they didn't have any electricity, though. They had ice box. They had boxes. Ice was delivered, whatever, and the milk. And that was quite different from out in the homestead days. And then my sister went to Boise, Idaho. That's the reason I went to Wyoming in the first place. My sister was there, and she was expecting a baby, and the baby was born on the 4th of July. And then the next year we went over to Boise, Idaho, and my brother-in-law worked at he painted at the VA hospital, and when we went back from there, I went to work at the dime store in Sheridan, F.W. Woolworth. You ought to all read that book. It's very interesting. Anyway, I was working at the dime store, and I went to Hyman's Business College. I think it was up above the Sheridan stationery now. And I took typing and shorthand, and I thought, shorthand, I could write better in longhand than I could shorthand. And I didn't think I'd ever sit behind a desk anyway and do that kind of work. And so I saw that in the paper there was these 2 jobs for cooks, and I thought, that sounds more like what I'd like. So I called one of the names, and it was Mr. Kip Wilson, and he came in and interviewed me, but he said, oh, you're much too young. They were going to go back to Pittsburgh, and he thought I was much too young to stay at the ranch by myself. And so he said, but I'll get in touch with you when we get back. So I went down to Hibbard's down on KC, and it was a sheep ranch, and there were Mr. and Mrs. Hibbard, and Bunny and Marcia, and George, and what was the other one's name? Anyway, and then they had 3 sheep herders, and they brought the sheep in from the summer pastures is what they were doing, and I don't know exactly what all they do to that, but they had a big garden, and the cookhouse was separate from the main house, and one end of it was the bedroom, and that was where I was supposed to stay. I was really afraid. I hadn't been out in a place like that all alone before, and so I put a chair under the doorknob. There wasn't any lock on the door, and I didn't know about those sheep herders. But I did the cooking. They had a big garden, and she used to bring the meat from up at the house. They didn't have electricity, but they did have an ice box and kept ice and stuff, so she'd bring the meat down, and then I would cook the meal. And one day we went, Mrs. Hibbard, the girls and I went to Casper, and then on one Sunday, the boys and I took a trip all over the hills down there. You know how the hills are down there, just grasslands, and then they wanted me to stay all winter. Then I had cooked as long as they needed to cook. It was just a temporary job, and they wanted me to stay and work for my board and room and take up a homestead on their place, and they would help me get it fenced and all this and that. And I thought it sounded kind of interesting, but Mr. Wilson called about that time, and he wanted me to come to work for them, and I would get $20 a month in my board and room and uniforms, and so that sounded much better than to be working down there for my board and room. So Mr. Hibbard brought me to town, and he gave me a check for $25, and I thought, well, I better get that cashed before I go out on the ranch. I didn't know when I'd get back in again, and I got to the bank, and it was inefficient funds. So Mr. Wilson thought that was pretty cheap to give me a check like that. So anyway, he had something to do with the bank, and he had as soon as there was any money in that bank, I was to get my check first, which I did. And then we went on to the ranch. We got there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I met Mrs. Wilson, and we visited a little while. Then she said, we might as well get started. And so we were going to have dinner that night, and so I had to go and put on a uniform. And they were black uniforms, and they had white collar cuffs and a little apron and a little thing for your hair. and you know, it didn't make me feel a bit like I was a servant. They were so good, and I felt I was really learning something that might come in handy someday, who knows. And so, anyway, she taught me at the table just how to serve, and first how to set the table, and they always served, even for the two of them, they had everything set very formal, and candles and a dish of fruit was on that night. But usually if they had company, they had flowers, and they had 2 silver pheasants that we put on for company and things, and flowers and candles and things. It was really much different than I had ever been, and so I served dinner, and then the next morning, then I had to turn down their beds, and the next morning I had to get up early and dust the living room and that sort of thing, and get ready for the day. And Mr. Wilson always had breakfast at the table, and then Mrs. Wilson would have hers in front of the fireplace on the couch with a tray. And so we'd visit, and if she was going to have a dinner or something, while we planned what it was, and all the times we'd try something before we'd have it for the guests. And this went on for years. and I liked it. They had a big garden. Mr. Wilson was very proud of his garden, and we had a big asparagus bed, and so I'd help in the garden and help pick asparagus, and they had a, well, it's a beautiful ranch. They had the house, and then there was the ice house and a garage by the big house, and then you went around with the barn, and there was the barn and the bunkhouse and the chicken house, and there's a little creek between, and that was the spring house, and right across the path was the root cellar. And we kept, when we got a lot of eggs, we'd put them down in water glass, and when we picked the asparagus, we'd make it into bunches and put it in the spring house where the water went through. Now this is Jackson Creek. It's where it starts up above
Above Denses?
Yes, it's Denses now. It was Wilson's. There was 1,200 acres, and they had cattle, and they had topped the market 5 years in succession. I felt like I was really working for, it was interesting. Every bit of it was interesting. I didn't feel like I was a slave or anything. I was part of the family, and I was just there about a month, and the cook quit. The one that Nellie Stevens, she had taken the job when they had been gone back east when I first applied for it. And I watched everything she did. I had to do my dishes in the butler's pantry and use the good dishes. And then in the kitchen, we used the kitchen dishes. And yes.
Actually, Melvine, they're gonna change the tape.
Yeah.
So just take a little
Yeah.
bit of a rest.
Okay. Lake was underwater, and so I went to work for the Pattersons, and they had moved back for the summer, and so I was in helping them, and Jimmy Jakes came in from out of Pass Creek and wanted me to come out there and work just also hiring other men, and also my brother and Les came out, and Lyle, or Merlin got a job in the corrals, and Les got a job milking the cows and taking care of the garden. And we was there all summer, and they had a man cook, Mike, I can't remember his last name, I don't know if I ever knew it or not. Anyway, a couple times he went out on Saturday night, and I did the cooking and all. And in the fall, like everybody left. Well, sometimes the ladies would want their hair done, but they didn't want to come clear to Sheridan. So I'd do their hair, and I'd get a tip maybe for $1, $1.50, something that way. But it saved them quite a bit because it cost them something when they came in. And in the fall, in September, everyone had left excepting, all the help, excepting Kelly Wetzel and Lee Perkins and Les and I. And so we moved the kitchen up to the ranch house. And of course, Mr. and Mrs. Jakes. And I did the cooking, and then finally, Kelly and them were finished with the horses and things. So we were all finished, and we came to town, and we didn't know where to go particularly. I didn't want to go down to the folks and live, and I didn't have any place to particularly go to work. But I went to work at the dime store, and Les went to work at the sugar factory. But first, Les's brother thought we should get married, and I really didn't want to get married because I was older than Les. And but we finally decided to get married. So we were married in the Methodist church. No one was there but my sister, and Donna and Florence stood up with us, and then Diar's wife, that's Les's brother's wife, and Monty Powell, and that was our big wedding. Anyway, he went to work for the sugar factory, and I went to work for a dime store again, and mine was just until inventory time, and of course the sugar factory only lasted so long. And so his brother came and got us from Nebraska, and we were down to Nebraska, and I met all the Rolstons. I thought I'd never remember all of them. And we were there until when we came back, we got an apartment, a furnished apartment, but we didn't stay with it only just a little while. We went out to Hardin's, and they live out on Soldier Creek, and we went to work for them, and we got $15 a month for the two of us. Those are tough times. I mean, work was hard to get, and then we after they got finished haying, we went over to Bob Helby's. He had a place out of Dayton, and I did the cooking, but just Bob and Les and I. But on Sunday, Mr. and Mrs. Bob's mother and dad and his grandmother, I can't think of her name, anyway, she had Minnie Martin. Yeah. And they'd come out on Sunday. They'd go to church. They'd come out on Sunday and have dinner, and so that was okay. But what we were really waiting for was to get back to Jason's, and they were going to open up again in spring, and we had the job always promised to us. But Les got to go back a little bit before I did, and I went down to the folks and finished a quilt I was making, and then I went out to Jake's, and we were getting the cabins ready, and was doing some washing one morning, and I passed out, and they found out I was pregnant. So they wanted me to work for my board and room and tips, and I thought, yeah, tips. What would we have when the summer was over? We wouldn't have anything. So we decided to quit, and we got on the train and went to Grand Coulee, Washington. And I don't know if it was a good move or not, because out there, Les got 35 cents an hour, and we paid $35 a month for a two-room apartment. I don't know if you'd call it apartment. There was kind of a house, and there was two rooms on two sides and a counter board in between. You could hear everything the neighbors said. Anyway, we stayed there, and Lyle was born in October then. And when he was 6 weeks old, they used to wear bands. And when I took the bands off, why, he was ruptured, and also his little testicle come down. And so, of course, I was a nervous wreck. And there were some people that lived in a freight train on a truck. And so I took the baby over to her, and so she knew just what to do. So she put it in, and then when Les came home, we took him to the hospital. Now, see, Mason City was where they were digging, and then there was Engineerstown, and Grand Coulee was up above. And so we took him to the hospital, and the urn turns were just in there at the time, and so they wanted to keep him all night, and they'd have to operate the next morning. Well, I wasn't about to leave him. I nursed him, and they'd give him a formula. But I spent the night walking the floor with him, and the next morning my doctor was back, and he said, well, of course you couldn't operate. He wouldn't have a 50-50 chance, so he called Spokane and had a trust sent out. Well, it was fine, excepting it. Every time he kicked these little legs, it would come out. So after about a week, why, he wanted to know if we could get him to Spokane. And we said, well, we would if it was necessary. So we took him, and we saw Dr. Barnett. He was a specialist, and he had a trust made that would stay in place and everything, and he wore it till he was about 2 years old. Well, in the meantime, we came back to Sheridan. Yeah. And is that what we went to? Yes. Rudolph's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Time for Rudolph.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk a little bit about cooking for the Rudolphs.
Yes, but we haven't got there quite. Well, yes, because Lyle was 2 years old when we went to cook with Rudolph. Yeah. And my sister, well, I know, I borrowed on my insurance, and we got a trailer house, and we were in Grand Coulee yet, and it was just about 20 or 25 foot long. It was homemade, and we stayed in it all winter. And then my sister and her husband came out and pulled that trailer all the way back to Sheridan, which we could have sold it out there much easier. But we moved back to Wilson's, and we were there for a year. Yeah, because Lyle was a year old while we were there. He learned to walk while we were there, and he was about 2 when we moved away. And then I went to work for Rudolph's, and I took Lyle with me, and Rudolph's were very nice. I think they were with Pittsburgh Paint or something, and they had 3 girls and a boy, Gus, and all of them. And Mrs. Rudolph, she had special dinners, and the one thing I remember about their place, she liked dressing, and you just used the white, picked it out like popcorn, and then she had butter and sage with it, and it was very good, but it was real light and everything. And let's see what else. We had Easter there, and I cooked a lot of eggs and colored them, and they had an Easter egg hunt then, and Lyle got to help hunt Easter eggs, and they had a beautiful garden and everything. And then Mr. Rudolph didn't get up in the morning and have breakfast with him, but he'd call later and tell me what he wanted. And they had 2 maids. One of them's here today. She came when I left, and Margaret Ellenwood, she was here once. Anyway, she came as a maid, and then she took over the cooking and was there 3 years. So that was one of the times that I wasn't there too long. I just was there until I could get someone. And then I went to work for Vi Garber, and Rudolph's paid me $1 a day, but Mrs. Garber paid me $2 a day. And Victor was in the bed with a broken leg, and Orr and Miggs had little Jimmer, and little Jean was only about 9 years old. And I was there for a while, and she taught me into starting a dining room of my own, and said then I could be at home, and the family could be together and everything. So Don and Florence had started a dairy over here where Bob Helby's place is now, and so I borrowed on my insurance again and bought dishes from Bob Todman, and we fixed up Don and Florence didn't have anything in the dining room or in the living room, so that was going to be my dining room, and I bought table and chairs, and you had to go through from the kitchen through the bedroom into the living room, and where I had the tables and things, and it was quite a setup and pretty unhandy, but I had a stove and things in the kitchen, and see, we didn't have water in the house or any refrigeration or anything. There was water close, but not where you turn the faucet on or anything. Anyway, I was there for quite a while, and then I moved over to Sue Sackett's house. It's a brand new one right across from the filling station where Bessie and Leroy had their filling station. And I was there the rest of the summer, and again, I was pregnant with Gail. And Lyle was just a little guy, and Sue's taking fishing all the time. But one day, there's some people come to, Beckwith lived right at the door, next door to me, and Lyle used to go over to her house all the time, and she had company one day, and he said, you can't go in there, you can't go in there, Becky's taking a bath. And one time, he went over and told her that Mommy's on the floor and I can't get her up. And I had passed out again. Every time I turned around, I used to pass out. I didn't get sick of my stomach, I just pass out. And so anyway, that fall we moved up to Watt Smith's, and Les got a job. During the summer though, while I was cooking, I had company, and here they brought Les home. He was up on the top of the pole. He was working for Little Goose Distributing. He just started, and the pole fell with him and knocked him down and knocked his teeth out. It knocked his shoulder out of place. And, well, they brought him home, and here I had all these company at the table. Not company, but customers. And you can imagine how you felt, just a nervous wreck. Anyway, he had to have it put in, and every so often, and so that fall we moved up to Smith's, and the first week we were trying to get the chickens in to keep from roosting in the trees, and he ran around the chicken house and fell, up came the shoulder. So, of course, he couldn't work for a while. And Lyle and I was in a little house about a quarter of a mile or half a mile up from there wasn't a big stone house then, it was just a ranch house. We stayed up there, and I wasn't working or anything because I was expecting Gail. And one morning I woke up in the morning, and all this noise, the cars was going by, and I couldn't imagine where they was going. We was at the end of this road. I mean, you couldn't go any farther. That was a chicken house. And the chicken house was on fire. Well, they got it out, and they had stoves in the chicken house, and then they had hay or straw in the bottom. It's no wonder a spark had flew out and started the chicken house. Anyway, they got it put out, and then Les was digging in the lilacs, and he showed her come out again. So they wanted me to do the cooking, and we could stay if I would do the cooking and things. I had cleaned 4 cabins that they used in the summer when they had guests. That was before they had their big house. And it was cold, and I'd take Gail with the baby in the buggy and little Lyle, and then they wanted me to stay and cook, and they would keep us, but I couldn't see how I could manage with the baby and all. And so they let us go, and we came down to Bighorn and stayed at the teacherage where the DeJarnets was going to Kansas to. They went back on the trip every once in a while, and they wanted someone in their house, so we stayed there. And Les and Herman Schultz, we borrowed money, $500 from him, and was building our garage over here for a house. I mean, that we were going to stay in it until we got the house built. Well, they got to the roof of it, and Les' shoulder come out again. So Dr. Rogers said that he could not keep it in, and he never did that operation. So he sent him to Billings, and the little goose distributing, I think that the people that had stock in it or something, they took up a collection and paid for the hospital bill, and we paid the doctor. And while Les was up there getting operated on, Inga Olson came and said that Teepee wanted someone for just a few weeks during the busiest time. And so I took Lyle and Gail down to my folks. They were down on Clear Creek then, and left them. I went up to Teepee and did cabin work for, well, it was a little over a month. And when I came down, I got $75. And so we went down after the kids, and Gail didn't know me. I felt terrible. It was election day, and everybody had, there was a schoolhouse right close to the other house, and so people had been in there voting, and so they came over to see the baby, and so when I got there, I was just another person. But it made me really feel bad. And then we came back to Bighorn, and there was that little house, and it wasn't finished. You know, you could look through the logs and see the cars go by and everything. And we had a plank out the back door that you walk down to go to the bathroom. Herman had gone ahead and finished the house as far as it was finished, and he built a toilet, and a real nice log toilet for the town. And we didn't have any water. We had to haul water from the corner house over here. And what did I do after that?
You want to talk a little bit about getting the dining room set up here in Bighorn?
Or the Gallatin?
Oh, we went to Gallatin's, didn't we? Yes. And at the dairy. Yeah. And I had when did I cook for the Mosses and the Carnahans? Was that before? No, that was after.
If you say after, well, first Gallatin's, and then Carnahan.
Yeah. Went to Gallatin's, to the dairy. And that was during the war here. And I know we came down, Don's birthday was the 7th of December, and so we came down for his birthday, and that's when we heard about Pearl Harbor. And that was terrible that night, I suppose everybody remembers. And then we went up at the dairy and worked for the Gallatin's for all during the war. And Les couldn't go on account of his shoulder and being on a ranch and everything, so he was deferred. And so we had 27 7 cows, and Les milked 20 of them, and I milked 7 of them until we got the milking machines. And we had the chickens, and took care of the little chickens, and then they had a chicken house where we gather the eggs, and we take milk and cream and butter down to the big house and over at the ranch house. The Covers were at the ranch house. That's how we got our job. I mean, Mr. Cover hired us. He was the manager of the Gallatin Ranch. And then we were there all during the war. And the last few years, they had trouble with their health and stuff. I don't know, different ones died. Now they had Gallows really had ranch house. They had the Buck house for like Bill Amer and Roy Neal and some of them that worked on the ranch. And then they had a long string of rooms that different ones stayed in. Opal and Long, Junior Long, and they had 3 girls, and Bob Cadell and Lyle and Chesco went to school on the bus, so we always had to have Lyle from up at the dairy down to so he could go on the bus with Bob and Chesco. And Sandra was just a little guy, and he and Gail were about the same age, and they played together. I used to go down and help every time they needed someone extra, someone leave or something, and so I went down to the ranch house and helped, or down to the main house and helped. And after we left Gallatin's then, Les was called and had to take his physical, and he passed. And so we left our job, and the fellow that was going to take over came and had dinner that night, and we had fried chicken and everything, and the next day he found he had cancer, so he couldn't come. So we stayed on another month, and then came down to our house that was kind of finished, and I decided that I would have a dining room again, and so we had a sun porch put on. Well, 2 men came out. I had to borrow money, of course, to get it done, and so Mr. Myers and Mr. Can't think of his name. Anyway, they came out and to see how I had planned and all. And he said, well, he didn't know, he couldn't see through it, but he said he'd do it if Melvine did it, she'd pay for it. So I got the money and had the sun porch put on, and had a well drilled, and started the dining room. And I had Bob Totman, of course, was another one of my customers. After Bob Totman came, I didn't have to worry. But I went to work for the Mosses at first while they were building this on, and Mr. Moss he wouldn't eat leftovers at all. So there was a cook and a butler, and Carnahan's had a cook and a butler. But when they had company, I always had to go and help. And we ate off of Mr. Moss that winter. He wouldn't eat leftovers, and that cook was so good, she'd save everything and bring it down to our house. And it was really, really good food. And the Carnahans, they finally got our house finished then with a sun porch and all. And so I opened it again, and I was there for, I think she said 6 years. I don't know whether it was 6 years altogether, counting the first year that I had cooked when I was over to the Rolston dairy. And
do you want to talk about how formal your dining room was?
yes, it was very formal. I had good dishes and set the table like we did at the Wilsons, and I had real napkins and everything. I mean, I still have 12 cups with 12 handles on them that I used all the time, and they're Empress china, and I had another set of Verleware. And one day, I served lunches at noon too, and at night, and everything was by reservation. And so one noon, Les worked at the fire station at the time, and so he was just home every other day. And one day, I had a luncheon, and I had seed strippers for 2 years that they stripped bluegrass, and so I always had them for noon, and sometimes they had to eat out in the yard because I didn't have room enough in the house, but they, instead of going to Sheridan, well, they ate here. And one day I had the seed strippers, and I had a luncheon at noon, and then I had reservations for that night, and I was really in a mess because I had, I don't know what's happened, I didn't have a girl for some reason that day, and Cy Calhoun and Les came out, and they cleaned up the backyard, and they did dishes, and they finally got everything in order, and I got my reservation taken care of on time. But it was times like that you really didn't know what to do. I mean, you just couldn't go fast enough. But
Talk a little bit about the food that you served at your dining room.
About the food I served at the dining room was mostly fried chicken. Fried chicken and mashed potatoes and gravy and a vegetable and salad and either pie or cake. And I always had an ice cream. This fellow that had the dairy in town, when I had Arrowhead and when I had my dining room, he had a ice cream vat for me, and so I had ice cream all the time too, so I could serve it with cake and pie or something. I also made homemade candy, divinity and fudge, and so a lot of people would buy candy at the time. And Gail was real good help, although she was just tiny. Everybody got such a kick out of she could pour coffee and carry a saucer, cup and saucer, and wait on people. And we really had, everything was nice. It wasn't, our house wasn't nice. And the Champions came out. We had a piano, and they played the piano and sang. It was a place where people could go and be by themselves, and because I never took two reservations at the same time. I wasn't equipped to handle that much, but the people really enjoyed because it was sort of private. And you go to restaurants now, and there's so much noise, and there's just not a place in town anymore. There used to be one on North Main Street that I've forgotten the name of it, but people love to come out here to Bighorn and eat, and as I say, the Champions always played the piano and everything, and it was a good place to come and enjoy their food and visit and all, and I enjoyed doing it. I love to cook.
Melvine, what did a meal cost? What did your fried chicken dinner cost at that time? Probably.
It's about $1.50 to $2. My menus at Arrowhead are here, and it has the prices on them then too. Well, it wasn't enough. Rosa Olson, I got the chickens from her, and she dressed them and everything. They were lovely chickens. And we did have a garden out back of the house on that lot, and so we had fresh corn and peas or beans or something like that. So it was different than bought and stuff. I mean, it was, yes, it was supposed to be good stuff. Yeah, what about Arrowhead?
So you might want to talk just about a couple more things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then the different places I worked, because we're getting short on time.
Well, and I
The different places that I went back to TV and worked for 5 summers, and Gail went with me. I wouldn't go unless Gail went with me. I had more surgery, and anyway, after I kind of got better from that, why we went to work up at TP, and I love TP. And they're going to have a reunion in August, and I'm looking forward. They couldn't have it without the cook, I don't think. And then I went to where I had Arrowhead Lodge in 1961 and 62, and the first month I was there, they had a fire up in the mountain, and so the ranger came and knocked on my window and wondered if I could feed 200 firefighters. And I said yes. They probably wouldn't get everything because I had well stocked up because I just started. And so there was only about 150, but in the meantime, my son was working up, or he wasn't working there, he was staying there, he and his instructor, and he worked for the BLM, and so I went down and got him from his cabin, and because he knew about fires and things, how to handle them, and I had 3 waitresses, and so when they 150 came, they came in the kitchen door and went through with I had a steam table and into the dining room and right on out, and he said I did a beautiful job serving them, and they all had breakfast. We had everything cooked ahead that we could, and then the second year was Seattle Fair, and of course I was open from 6 o'clock. I was supposed to open. I was under contract. I had to open a Memorial Weekend, and I couldn't close until Labor Day, and I fed the 8 people from over in the other place, and 3 meals a day, and I was so busy I didn't know whether I was coming or going, and at night I was so tired I just took out enough cash for the next day and then put the rest in the deep freeze. But I made it through the summer. If Dr. Thickman was here, he might tell you. Anyway, that was my 2 years at Arrowhead. And then at Dome Lake, I just got down from there, and we went to the ranch and stayed 3 years up at Tip Wilson's until the estate was being settled. Mr. Wilson died and Mrs. Wilson died. She was in the hospital when I came down from Arrowhead, and I went to see her, and then she'd fallen and broke a hip in the bathroom, and then she died, and I went to her funeral, and we went out to Seattle to the fair and came back and stayed up to the ranch then for 3 years, and so I got back my health again. And then the day that we left there, I started at Dome Lake, and Clyde Lund and his wife were caretakers there, and the Carneys wanted to get somebody that could cook, and Clyde said, well, he'd do it with someone if I wasn't too busy, and so I started. When I left the ranch, I went right up to Dome Lake, and I was there 16 summers. And when I got through at Dome Lake, it was real nice. I had the bankers from Denver. There were 4 different banks, and then they would bring their directors, and they had their meetings because there was no telephone, and everything was quiet and all. And that's when Slade helped me, and that was where he started college, and. Then after 16 summers, the Les took over Park Reservoir, and so Mr. Carney wanted me to stay and cook more, and he said he'd give me $100 a day if I'd sign. I said, it isn't the money, but I just have to help less. So I quit, but I got Gail, and she came up then and cooked for 2 years, and they were changing over. They had changed from 4 bags to 13. They merged, and so they weren't going to let them go up out of Colorado. They had some of them wanted to golf, and some of them wanted to do this or that, and not everybody wanted to fish. So one of the presidents bought the cabin at Dome Lake that the bankers had, and I got a Christmas card. I was telling Lane today, I hear from them all the time. It was really, really nice people, and I learned a lot through the banks and things. And Lane always remembered their names. I knew what they drank. If they drank tea or coffee or they had happy hour, but there was no drinking. Nobody got drunk or anything. They had happy hour when they come in the evening before dinner. And then they would go fishing until maybe 9 o'clock, and so after that you had sandwiches or laid out cold cuts and a cake and cookies or what, went to bed. And so then when I came down from that, I guess I worked at Bradford Britton's. I think that was the last place I worked in. And Les died exactly 15 years ago today, 27th of February, and at 3:33 in the afternoon. Yes, and I had worked the 3 summers before that at Bradford Britton. The first summer I cleaned that big house, 27 rooms, and Dorothy, of course, was there, and the 2 of us worked. And then the next 2 summers I was showed people through the house and everything, and then that next winter we went to Tucson, and I had written them and told them not to plan on me the next summer because we planned on going to Alaska. There were 3 couples of us who were going to go to Alaska. But we went over to, in Mexico. Les always wanted to go to this one place in Mexico, and so we finally got to go. It was, I think of Rocky Mountain, but it was Rocky Point, yes. And so we got to go there, and we was waiting for Lane's baby. They were going to come to Tucson, and we stayed over a month so that we could be there. And Hannah was going to be born, and when Les called Lane to tell him that Les had died, Lane said he was sorry that they had just hated to call and say that they couldn't come because Hannah had ear infection, so they couldn't bring her on the plane. And so that was about the end of everything.
Do you want to just mention your 4-H? Because I know you're very proud of it.
Yes. I had 4-H girls for 14 years, and I loved them. There might be 2 of them here today. One of them lives in Hardin, and one of them over there.
Someone has a hand up.
I was in Melvine's 4-H class, sewing and canning, and she was the best leader around.
I didn't know who she was.
Say your name. My name is Sue Pelletier Hill.
Sue Pelletier.
Oh! Bless your heart, Sue. Yeah. Well, Patty Powers and Patty Kay were, Patty, one of them comes quite often to the meetings here, and then Patty lives up at Hardin, I think, and she comes once in a while. And I had all those girls were, I just really enjoyed every bit of them. And I had so many of them that did really well, and I still hear from them. The one girl is Jeannie Moreland, and her uncle lives right across the road here, close. And her daughter's husband was one of them that stayed up in space all that time last year. And they said if they ever come to talk or anything, to be sure and come to because it was very interesting. And and there was 3 of them here last year. I came out to have dinner on Thursday, and there was Dolores DeJarlett, yes, and Hay Bales, Donna Bales. We always called her Hay Bales. And another girl over here on the corner. I can't think of her name right now. Anyway, I get to see them once in a while, and I'm really looking forward to, of course, the reunion. They're having a big reunion in September.
Melvine, this might be a good time. I forgot to put it in the newsletter, Boyne. They are going to have anyone that has worked at TP or was a guest at TP. They're going to have a big, hopefully, reunion this summer, I think on the 21st of August. I have it written down. It'll go in the next newsletter. Jerry Landon and Sherry are pretty much in charge of it, plus Mike Morton in town, and I have his telephone number. But they are inviting any that had any association with TP to come to this reunion. It's going to be at the Equestrian Center. It's going to be an all-day affair. So any of you, if you were involved or know anybody that was involved, I'll try and get that in the next newsletter so you can make a contact.
Well, Melvine, I can't thank you enough for such an enjoyable afternoon, and I think everybody just really loved your stories. I want to tell one last story on Melvine, because I had the pleasure of visiting with her several times, and most of you know that she helped the Wallops when the Queen of England came to cook, and Melvine said to me, I don't really want to talk about cooking for the Queen because my 4-H girls were much more important to me. They were more special than the Queen of England. She has a poem.
A thank you poem. People everywhere in life, from every walk and station, and every town and city, and every state and nation, have given me so many things, intangible and true, dear. I couldn't begin to count them all, or even make them clear. I only know I owe so much to people everywhere. And if I put my thoughts in verse, it's just a way to share the musings of a thankful heart, a heart much like your own. And for everything I think and write is mine and mine alone. So if you found some beauty in any word or line, it's just your soul's salvation. Not salvation. It's just your soul's reflection in divinity and mine.